G'day, the Las Vegas Grand Prix has been run and won, and how did it go? Well, two schools of thoughts. I'll go into more detail in just a moment. This was the second of at least 10 Grand Prix for Las Vegas, and how did it go? Well, certainly it went a lot smoother than it did last year. The construction of the track was a lot quicker than last year. Obviously, they didn't have to repave the road. That was done once, and I think it's going to last probably 7 years. And the pack-up, well, when I left 2 days after the event, it was going swimmingly. Most of the barriers along Las Vegas Boulevard have been taken down. But yes, with a city track, there's always going to be discomfort for locals who have to live with the pre- and post-event work. Numbers-wise, just over 300,000 people attended over the 4 days. Now that's pretty good numbers. It's not going to be an Australian Grand Prix or a Silverstone because those take place in a much bigger park area where you can fit a lot more people in. The start time brought back by 2 hours. A good move. I still don't think it's ideal. We started the first race at midnight. This year's race was at 10 p.m. I'd like to see it brought back to 7 p.m. and I know a lot of the US people would be very much in favour of that because on the East Coast that race started at 1 a.m. You have to be a very devout F1 fan to be staying up till 1 a.m. to watch a race. But of course if we bring it back to 7 p.m. local time, that'll appease a lot of the US viewers. But in Europe that will mean some of you having to get up at an ungodly hour to watch the race. But it's dark at 5 p.m. in Las Vegas, and I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, that this race was scheduled to start late because they didn't want too much disruption to the traffic during the day. Well, I think pretty much people are used to that disruption. And whether it comes early or late in the day, I don't think it's going to matter that much. So that would be my ideal situation, a 7 p.m. start. I've gone into some detail in past videos about locals who are unhappy with the event, and there are certainly a number of them. But that's probably the case in every street circuit that we race in. But I did a meet and greet outside Caesar's Palace on one of the mornings. And there was about 120 people there, and I asked them who's in favour, who's not. There was not one person who thought it was a bad thing. They were all in favour of it. Now, I can't tell you whether they are from out of town or locals, but certainly I was surprised that nobody had an issue with it. Was the racing good? It wasn't as good as last year, but still better than most races. And thankfully, we had no debacle like we had in the 2023 race. As the years go by too, I think the people who were soured, and there were a lot of them, soured by being kicked out of that event. I know that the Las Vegas Grand Prix Authority handed back some compensation to those people, but I understand it was only a $200 voucher, and it wasn't for all of the merchandise available. But as years go by, I'm sure people will put that in the back of their mind and focus on perhaps the more positives that have come since. And just quickly, at the end of this video, if you head across to my shop at kimellman.com, you'll notice a couple of things, 3 in particular. Yes, we have a new Fernando Alonso signed print offer. 2, you can order my Best of 2024 yearbooks. There are 2 this year, the normal size, and an absolute monster at 4+ kilograms. And neither of those books are finished yet because I'm waiting for the last race. And there will be 4 different cover options that you can choose from. And every book is custom printed, plus if you order before the Monday after the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, you'll get yours before Christmas in most countries. And thirdly, I have a Black Friday sale which covers most, but not all, of my products, and certainly not those 2 new ones. There's a link in the description to head to the shop at kimellman.com. Other things that you liked, the Las Vegas Grand Prix fan experience, which was held outside the track near the Wynn Hotel. A few of the F1 Academy drivers appeared at that, and it didn't require you to buy a ticket. So this was a way of getting people who perhaps couldn't afford to go to the event to perhaps get a little bit more involved. And they even had the Ferrari Challenge cars housed up in that particular area. But imagine if Las Vegas got F2 here. I think that would be a real boon for the sport. I'm not sure if it's considered. I'm not sure if it's even possible, but certainly another top quality category of racing on this track would be a real boon for the whole event. Did this event draw plenty of stars? And indeed you even care? Well, it did draw plenty, and that is F1's direction. They love the fact that these celebrities roll up, talk about the event to their millions of followers, and for them it is pretty much free marketing. Liberty Media is a business though. They own Formula One, and it's their charter to grow the sport, probably with the end aim of selling it off for a massive profit. So for them, getting those influencers in makes good sense. Yes, It forces the prices up because the sport becomes more popular. And yes, I understand that fans aren't too happy about this because tickets will be harder to get, and already you have to order your tickets up to a year in advance for a Grand Prix. Was this event a sellout? Look, I can't tell you. I'm getting reports that it was and that it wasn't. What I will tell you, I was out at the Sphere for FP1 and the stands were half full, if that. Later in the evening for FP2, plenty of seats still showing in the fans. And for FP3, much the same. Quali, it filled up to nearly full, but by race day, the stands were chock-a-block. Let's talk about the traffic. Not as bad as the year before, I understand, but still, it is a real grind. And if you get stuck in the middle of the track, in particular behind the link, it's a nightmare on the Friday and the Saturday. It took actually my son was driving, 90 minutes to go 2.5 kilometres. It'd be great if they had Lime scooters, but I understand they're not available for rent in this city. But certainly having so many hotels so close to the track is a real draw card because you don't need to drive. You can walk if you're happy to walk a couple of kilometres, and what is that, half an hour tops probably. This year on the Wednesday there was no big welcome ceremony with all the drivers being introduced. There was a mini version of that, I guess, for the drivers' parade on race day, 2 hours before the race start, hosted by Michael and Bruce Buffer, legendary US announcers. But look at the grandstand. A fraction of the seats are filled. Was it worth it? I don't know. Maybe it was transmitted around the whole circuit. If you were there, perhaps note that in the comments. But even then, you wouldn't have thought people would be sitting in the grandstands further away from the pit straight if they weren't sitting in them at the pit straight. Another issue that gets quite a bit of comment on my Instagram page is the food included with your ticket price. Is it a good idea? Well, I think in general, yes. And this is some of the food I saw on sale out at the Sphere, which I think is probably the best place to watch this. It had the best buzz because you had this marvellous fan zone inside and outside of the track, along with the stage where they had concerts. But a couple of you remarked that they ran out of soft drinks and water early on Thursday, the very first day, and then they said they were going to have the same problems tomorrow, being the Friday. Which seems bizarre to me, because if you know that you're going to run out on Thursday, why don't you just get more for Friday instead of telling people to expect the same? The other thing that made no sense to me was that you got your free drinks at the same place that you queued up for your mixed cocktails or paid drinks. One's a lengthy procedure and the other one's just handing out a bottle. Maybe next year they'll split the lines so that those who want a soft drink or a water can just grab one and quickly nip off. What about ticket pricing? Look, I can't see it coming down. If they're selling out at the prices that they're charging, why would you drop the prices? I know that a lot of fans want cheaper tickets, especially locals, who would like to go and experience this event, given that it causes them so much upset and pain. But if they do drop the prices, I'll be most surprised. And when you have a look at the infrastructure involved, I couldn't believe the number of people that were involved in getting this event off the ground. The labour hire companies must be rubbing their hands with glee. So many people were involved. And on the subject of the pit building, I was told last year that building would be multi-purpose throughout the year and be used for events, all sorts of things. Well, I understand from a couple of sources that there were no activities held during the year in that building. If you're a local, did you see anything going on there when racing wasn't happening? Certainly if they could pull an income out of that, that might help ticket pricing, but it's certainly not going to drop it by much, if anything at all. Now what about this deal where after the race the drivers are driven, thankfully on the track, not on the normal roads which would take forever, to the Bellagio for the interviews? Why are we doing that? I can only think that is a sponsor commitment to have that hotel behind. To me, it's a waste of time, given that you've got some minutes getting to and from, for no real benefit. I guess they do need to bring out those big platforms where the podium's held, which I think is a good thing. I quite like the platforms being out on the track and giving the people in the grandstand a real look at it, because that's something that does not happen anywhere in the sport. But if there wasn't a sponsor commitment there, I'd be questioning the value of driving them to another spot where very few people actually watch those interviews. Yes, it is beamed around the track on telly though. Now let's go to some of the complaints and the pats on the back that I received when I put up a recent Instagram post. It was too cold, have it earlier in the year. Well, I'm not sure that's possible, because the whole reason Vegas got the nod was that this was a dead weekend, the weekend before Thanksgiving. This filled a hole, brought more people into town, and therefore the major hoteliers were in favour of it then. The commentary on track. Yeah, it wasn't the best. I go from race to race, I hear a whole gamut of commentators around the world. And not that it was shocking, but I think it probably left a little bit to be desired. Oh, the weed smell, the marijuana smell is stifling around the whole track, and it pervades the whole city. There's no answer to that, but it is a definite negative for the event. General admissions, some people were saying that there were limited viewing positions and it wasn't a good deal. Perhaps F1 will look at that next year. Now let's get on to the paddock. The lighting in there is way too low. We need more light. It's terrible for photography. It's terrible for TV. And I understand that they're wanting to set this perhaps even nightclubby type atmosphere in there, but I think it needs more light. And the security on Friday and Saturday that surrounded the stars when they arrived was complete overkill. Sometimes 6 security guards walking around a driver or a celebrity, which seemed ridiculous for both the media and perhaps even more importantly the fans. They weren't allowed to get anywhere near these people. Now the positives, and there were many of them. You said more low-key, less showy. Thank you. I love the curves with the suits from a deck of cards. That was there in the first year and they've kept that. I love that touch. The security scanners, some were awful like the ones that we had to go through, but if you went in through the T-Mobile zone at the Sphere, you would have been thrilled because you didn't have to take out all of your stuff and put it on a table. You just walk straight through. More of those, please. Lots of comments to me about how accessible everything was by foot. Sometimes there was a long walk involved, but there were ways to get to and from most places without too much inconvenience. The Sphere got great reviews, and there were no long lines, as far as I've been told, to get into the track. Now, that was the complete opposite in Brazil, where we had lines that stretched for 90 to 120 minutes just to enter the venue. What I do think is a shame, and I'm not sure there's the answer to this, is that there are no stands at turn 14. Obviously there's no room, but that is where all the action happens. So if you manage to get yourself some sort of vantage point near the end of the Las Vegas Boulevard strip straight, where it turns left, that is the best place to watch that race, I reckon, for action anyway. For me, I love the event. I just think the photography side of things are excellent. The fact that we can stay close to the circuit and get there, if you don't drive, on busy nights pretty easily. I know a lot of you will say it's expensive to stay there. Well, it doesn't have to be, but it can be certainly. And eating out on the strip, yes, it's going to be much more than what you pay off the strip. But if your time is important, as it was with me, and I ate at a lot of Caesars restaurants, and I love the fact that I could easily go downstairs for a meal or nip across the road. And did I lose any money on the gaming tables? Yes, a couple of $100 of my money, but I did make $200 for the charity that Valtteri Bottas got involved with when I found that $100 chip. Well, I didn't actually, my son did, in the paddock at the track. So we took that back to the casino and turned 100 into 300 and donated it here to United Way. Now, before I go and give you a chance to pick up on my Black Friday specials at kimelman.com, I will ask you to like this video and subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Oh, gee, I tell you what, I would love to get to 400,000 by the end of the year. So I'm going to make a special plea. Could some of you help me out? Not all of you, but you in particular. Please hit the subscribe button. And for a whole lot of extras, head across here and have a look. Thanks for watching.
And stay passionate.
Well, it did these nuts.